And without further ado, I'm going to move on to our penultimate panel, Lorraine Marchand being interviewed by Rachel Fredman, our Head of Marketing Communications. Lorraine, thank you so much for coming on. And of course, being so kind to donate some of your books for the symposium today. If you were not fortunate enough to win a copy of Lorraine's books, there is a link in the chat where you can check out where to purchase Lorraine's book for a very modest fee, and be able to fill your head with all that knowledge that she's put into that book. So Rachel, over to you, and looking forward to the conversation.
Great, thank you, Jerry. Hi, Lorraine, how are you?
Hello, Rachel, very nice to see you this afternoon.
Good to see you too. Lorraine, can you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself? We know you're the author of The Innovation Mindset, but just give us a little bit of background before we go into some questions about your book.
Oh, yeah, I would be delighted. So I've been in the life sciences industry my entire career, and from the NIH to Bristol Myers Squibb, LabCorp, I've had an opportunity to consult with big pharma, medical device, as well as healthcare services companies. And I've also had a hand in founding 4 startups in diagnostics and therapeutics, and also healthcare services. So have been in the industry my entire career and have just seen so many challenges as well as opportunities. And those really were what the fodder was for my putting this book together.
Amazing. Well, definitely you have a very impressive background. So I guess tell us a little bit about the book and what was your impetus for writing the book, and how your rich healthcare experience helped shape the book.
Well, thank you, Rachel. I appreciate that question. So I'll start with just a brief story from my background. My dad was an inventor before the word innovation was really coined. And growing up, he would always challenge my brother and myself to find 3 solutions to every problem we encountered. And that experience really hit home one summer when I was 13 years old. And my father took us to the Hot Shops cafeteria in Wheaton, Maryland, 3 days in a row. And our job, sitting in the big red vinyl booths over breakfast of scrambled eggs and orange juice, was to determine what was slowing down table turnover. And after 3 days of writing in our composition books and using our stopwatch and interviewing waitresses and busboys, we determined that it was sugar packets, of all things. But when they were being dispensed in coffee and tea, they were being tossed on the table, under the table, and it was taking extra time to clean them up. But my dad didn't stop there, because he believed in the rule of 3. We had to move on and design 3 solutions. And so we did. And the one that we ended up taking to prototype was called the Sugar Cube. And it was a plastic dispenser that had the sugar packets as well as the discarded ones. And then to make sure it had value beyond just holding sugar packets, it was designed with 4 sides, and advertising could be inserted in it. Well, we showed it to the manager of the restaurant. She loved it, and she introduced us to the head manager for the Hot Shops cafeteria. And within about 6 months, our product was throughout the Baltimore, Washington area. So at a very early age, I learned that there was a reward for being curious. The problem solving was fun and lucrative. And when I went on to start my career in healthcare, I started out at the National Institutes of Health. And as I was at the NIH in the 90s, I was watching the human genome being sequenced. I was looking at advances in biologics and cell and gene therapy, and I could start to see the plethora of therapeutic advances that were going to be coming down the pike. I also looked at the juxtaposition of our clinical research infrastructure. And in those days, we were in the blockbuster era of cardiovascular medicine. And so trials were predominantly being conducted on white middle-aged men. There were a lot of concerns about conducting trials in women, and we didn't really have the sensibilities at that point in time to be thinking about other ethnicities and races that we might want to study. And there's just something that I realized when I viewed that our infrastructure was going to be woefully inadequate in order to support these new therapeutic advances, that we were going to have much more equity and accessibility across our clinical trials. And I just decided then that I was going to conquer that problem. And so in all of the different companies that I worked for, whether it's been large corporations like Bristol Myers Squibb or LabCorp, or the startups that I founded in diagnostics and ophthalmology, it's all been with an eye toward contributing to that infrastructure, trying to bring therapeutic advances to market much faster, and really just making clinical research accessible to all and medicines available and beneficial to all. So that's a lot of the impetus for my book.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So in your book, you talk about, thank you, that was fascinating background in terms of how you started with the sugar cubes. In the book, you talk about the 8 essential steps for transforming any industry. Can you share with us maybe 3 to 5 of those key principles that are applicable for healthcare innovators, in today's environment? And are those a constant throughout for any industry, or are they, I guess if you could talk about ones in particular to healthcare?
Well, I think that fundamental to any innovation, including healthcare, and obviously that's where I've spent my career, is first, you have to have a problem that you have observed that a customer, in our case, maybe it's a patient or a provider, is experiencing. But importantly, if it's going to be commercialized and come to market, you have to be solving a problem that somebody wants to pay for. And pay doesn't have to be financial, but it means that somebody's going to want to make an investment in helping to bring this new product or service to market. So I think that's very fundamental. And in terms of, are we seeing changes in healthcare and how innovations are coming to market, what innovations are dominating? Absolutely. But still, that fundamental principle of solving a problem and making sure that it's going to be relevant to someone and that they're going to invest in it, I think that that's a timeless principle. I think that a second component is around the idea of being able to pivot. And, to me, that's really critical, particularly in the environment that we're in. And if you're going to transform healthcare, if you're going to work within corporations, again, within startups, you have got to be able to look at market indicators. You have to continually be talking to your customers, getting information from them on likes, dislikes, needs. We have to look at the regulatory environment. So we have to keep our eyes on all of the surveillance of activities and events and trends that are happening around us and around our technology and our innovation. And we have to be willing to make adjustments. And I think that too often we can get very wedded to our technology, wedded to the path that we're on, ignore those symbols. And usually it's with dire results. So pivoting is a second key one. And then clearly we have to be able to communicate our message to influence others. Healthcare is a sector of multi-stakeholders. So you might have a customer, but you have to influence providers and caregivers and payers and a whole community of stakeholders. And so you have to be very cognizant and succinct with your messaging. You have to be able to influence others to make those changes. And clearly, you have to be able to garner investment, whether it's capital or strategic investment or resources, in order to bring your new idea to market.
Great. And one more question before we have to wrap up. I guess, just kind of given that these are the principles, do you see that as a constant over time, given all of the fast-paced changes in the healthcare ecosystem? And do you see that the key tenets of your book will kind of be valid now for a while, or do you see that changing over time?
Well, I think that when we think of innovation, we tend to think of serendipitous innovations that developed in the lab and there wasn't any intentional problem that we were solving. I think that we think of disruptive innovations like Uber and Airbnb and the iPhone. But I think that the innovations that we're involved with in healthcare as professionals on a day-to-day basis tend to be more incremental. They're making improvements. They're making things somewhat better. Sometimes we're around optimization. And I think that on the continuum, that kind of innovation is also very valuable and important. And I think that assignment given that, this idea of being able to solve a problem, create a solution that's going to be a fit, that a customer is willing to pay for, staying very attentive to the signals in your marketplace and in the environment, and being able to pivot. I think that those are just timeless, no matter what the environment that we're in. And I think, again, to those of us who are in the long game of making change, I think that those will serve us well.
Well, that's wonderful. Everyone, get your hands on a copy of The Innovation Mindset. And thank you very much, Lorraine.
Thank you,
Back to you,
Rachel.
Jerry.
Great.
No, Rachel,
Back to you, Jerry.
Wonderful interview there. Thank you. And Lorraine, thank you so much for kindly donating some books and, giving us some insight into the story behind the innovation mindset as well.